No, para limpiarme las orejas.
Marco, I just want to let you know I'm going to be managing the meeting for Will tonight. It's Robert from the office. So if you need anything before we get started, let me know.
Okay, it's exactly 6:30 now. We can start. Robert, do you see anybody else coming in at the moment?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay, so if they do, they can just join as we go, and I guess we'll get going. So I'm Michelle Birnbaum. This is the November 28th, 2022 meeting of the Vendor Committee of Community Board 8 Manhattan. I am a co-chair along with Marco Tamayo. And as you can see with the agenda up on the screen today, these are what we're going to be discussing. I will add, if you look at agenda item 1, you'll see vendor bills intro 116, of which there are A and B versions. The Senate bill 1175B, but there's also another city one, which is local law 18. A lot of these overlap. And the Senate one is far too lengthy to go over bit by bit. But Marco and I will give you a bit of an overview of each one, and then we'll open it up and you can comment on the bills, questions about the bills, and then agenda item 2, we're going to open it up to just the community comments about how street vending is affecting their life, the quality of life, whether in a good way or a non-compliant way, or whatever comment they choose to offer. And also we'll give you the opportunity of citing specific spots that are of concern to you, that you can give me the information and I will forward all to the appropriate agency. So at the moment, let me just tell you briefly, I'll read you a couple of things about each of the bills so you get an understanding. The big change that happened over the past few years with respect to vendor legislation is opening up the number of vendors to more than double in a 10-year period, with an eventual interest in completely lifting the caps so that there is no limit to the amount of street vendors. We'll talk mainly about food because a lot of the permitting has to do with that, but it does apply to all. So the New York City Council approved 1116B, which will create 4,000 new permits for street vendors in the city over the next decade, and will create a separate law enforcement unit to oversee the street vending community. Now, that part is a good thing. This community board, this committee, Marco and I have been advocating and have testified extensively in front of all council meetings to please institute a separate vendor enforcement squad, recognizing that this was not a priority necessarily for the police, and the Department of Health and Worker Protection, and Mental Hygiene was understaffed. The Department of Consumer Affairs and Worker Protection, which used to be an enforcing body, was no longer an enforcing body. So this was desperately needed, and yes, we have that. Our past meetings, however, have shown that the number of people in this enforcing squad is probably not as many as we would like to see. Starting in July, this past July, the city has begun handing out 400 supervisory licenses. Now, this license, they're now officially known as supervisory license, but in fact, it's really what was an old vendor license. I'll read a definition of it to you in a moment. And they'll be given out for a 10-year period until 2032. Of the 400 licenses issued each year, 300 will be in boroughs other than Manhattan, while the rest will be open to everyone else in the city. In addition, the bill requires license holders to be present at their carts while they're in operation. This is a big change because this was not the case. And so owners of the license were able to pay others to man the carts. In which case it was very difficult to hold someone accountable for infractions. In addition, the bill requires license holders to be present at their carts while they're in operation, a move also designed to squash the underground market that has developed, often charging vendors tens of thousands of dollars to operate illegally. The new license measure, which comes with a $500 annual fee, more than doubles the existing 2,900 license cap that's been in place in the city for decades. And as I said, it calls for the dedicating a vendor unit, but this vendor unit will be staffed to inspect only 75% of vendors citywide for at least once a year. Now, that is grossly insufficient for real enforcement, a once a year, because food vendors are also required to go to their commissaries for inspection and cleaning every 24 hours. Now, if you're only inspecting them once a year, there's a very good possibility that you're going to overlook a lot of that compliance. There was calls that the police department was called out by the vendor community for being heavy-handed in their treatment of vendors. However, if you've been following the newspapers recently, you see that there are a lot of complaints from vendors about the fact that they're getting too many tickets. And of course, there's never a discussion as to why they're getting the tickets. They never complain that they haven't done the infraction. It's just they're considering the infractions too menial to ticket. However, the infractions are in place for many safety reasons, like not being in front of a hydrant, 20 feet in front of the egress or entrance to a building, the entrance to a hospital, et cetera, et cetera. So there's good reason for those. This bill also included an advisory board. Now, the advisory board has the Department of Health, Transportation, Small Business, and the NYPD. There is a representative, 6 members selected by the City Council Speaker, including 2 vendor representatives, 2 small business representatives, 1 property owner representative, and 1 from a community organization. We have not heard from anybody as reaching out as for a community member. So I don't know whether or not they fulfilled that obligations. 4 members selected by the mayor, including 2 from the street vending community and 2 from small business. Again, you can see it's very heavy-handed. The community is not well represented. The advisory board will monitor the enforcement unit and the license expansion program, while also making recommendations to the council speaker and the mayor. Now, one of the concerns here is this advisory board will be given the task of recommending whether or not there should be more licenses issued or less. That does not come to the community for a vote or even for input. So if at the end of 10 years and they've more than, they've got 4,000 more licenses issued or whatever, and they say, gee, we think that the streets can tolerate another 4,000, they have the authority to put that forward. I have not seen anything that forces them to talk to anybody else. So that's that, among other things, it's in the nitty gritty, but it's too extensive to go into. But that is a city council bill, as is local law 18. And local law 18 has a lot of the same provisions. I'm giving you the overdraft, and then I'm going to turn it to Marco, and then we're turning it over to you. But I want you to know what it is so that you have something to talk about, so you have something to ask questions about. So at the moment, local law 18 now, that's also requiring an enforcement squad, has, the last time I spoke to them, only 14 to 15 members. They have plans to hire 10 additional. Even if that gives them 25 for the entire city of New York, grossly inadequate from my point of view. That also calls for adding the 4,000 new supervisory licenses over a decade, 400 a year. Mind you, that does not include the veteran vendors, who are very sadly misrepresented here, as they always are. The veterans will only add 45 license per year, where you're giving 400 to others. The veterans are very sadly overlooked. We've spoken about that many times. 100 permits allow Manhattan vending or any other borough if they choose. The rest allow for vending in other boroughs. The permit holder must always be present at the cart. And by 2032, all permits will transfer to this system. This is supposed to eliminate the illegal practice of renting out permits. However, we can extrapolate from the past that even after the additional permits are in place after 2032, that if the list isn't opened up, or if the permits aren't put out to be, however many you want, we can assume that there still will be permits for sale on the black market, which tells you how lucrative street vending is. Because if somebody's willing to pay this a year, they're earning plenty of money to pay 20, 30,000 for a permit. This means that there is money coming in. This one also creates an advisory board to monitor the enforcement unit, also consisting of reps for street vendors, the small business community, workers at retail stores, property owners, and community organizations, as well as the city agencies. Both food and general merchandise vendors will need to maintain 20 feet from stoop line stands and sidewalk cafes, building entrances, service entrances that are residential, stores, theaters, movie houses, sports arenas, and other places of public assembly. This is important for you to know, because if you see infractions, this is something that you can report. The Green Card program, which is a separate food and vegetable program, will be expanded, but there will be none, as far as I know, in our district. The one thing that is problematic to me about this bill and the new permissible things for the Green Card program is it used to be limited to fruits and vegetables, and now they're giving them options to include what they're calling healthy food. Now that's in the mind of the beholder, because they mention nuts, they mention some other things, you know, water, etc. But you can have bread considered healthy. You can have a lot of things considered healthy, which could potentially turn these carts into little bodegas or small supermarkets, which I think is a detriment and not fair to the bricks and mortar businesses. I'm not going to read all of this, but because that's about the licensing, which will be $500 a year, $25 for license or renewal, $100 for a vehicle selling foods prepared or processed. The license must be worn conspicuously. Again, the 20 feet restriction, again, the agency will provide the vendors with a map of restricted streets, which by the way is available to everybody on the city council website, under the city charter and under vendor rules and regulations. You can get a list of streets that are restricted to vending and the hours in which they are restricted, and whether it's to food and or merchandise restriction, but that can tell you what you need to know if you suspect that you see a vendor on a street that for which there is not where it's not permissible. Let me see if there's anything else. They also are going to oversee the designation of community spaces for vendors, specific locations for food trucks, and the availability of commissary space. We have long advocated for assigned spots for vendors. Vendors and the departments, the agencies now have electronic capability where they have little chips that they place on charts every time there's a license renewal every year or two. They put a chip on the cart. We are waiting for the software that enables those chips to be read in some central office, both to identify lack of compliance if a vendor is not in the right place, and most importantly, to check whether or not a vendor goes in and out of the commissary every 24 hours, because there is no obligation of any kind for a commissary owner, which is privately owned, to report such attendance. A vendor is also supposed to bring their garbage back to the commissary. So while I'm happy that there is such a proviso, I would like the community to be involved in that. Certainly the citing is something we have interest in, and it should come before us before they talk about anything like that. Now, 1175B is a state bill. That's a Senate bill. And let me just say that it has in it pretty much everything we talked about already. It does specify more about veteran vending because that's more a state issue than it is a city. It's controlled by the state. But to me, after perusing it, I'm more concerned about what it doesn't permit than what it does permit. And it does not restrict street vendors to operate only in a designated neighborhood or area, except when that restriction is directly related to objective health, safety, or welfare concerns. I submit there could be other reasons. It shall not restrict the overall number of street vendors permitted to operate within the jurisdiction of the local legislative body. The legislative body may, by law, ordinance, or resolution, adopt additional requirements regulating the time, place, and manner of street vending if the requirements are directly related to objective health, safety, or welfare concerns, including but not limited to any of the following. Limitations of hours of operation should not be unduly restrictive. This is of concern because of the noise created under people's windows. If they go to, it may be not crazy to be doing business till 10 o'clock at night, but if you had noise and lights under your window, you may wish you had some concerns. So there are things like that in the state Senate bill that are of concern. And before I open it up, and you can ask questions about anything, Marco has a map that he would like to share And it's relevant because it tells you who in the city council and where their districts are and how they fall in to who we can represent, who we can address as representatives. So Marco, do you have that ready to go? And any other comments you want to make on any of the laws that we just talked about?
Thank you, Michelle. I think you did an excellent presentation, that you're very good, thorough, and everything what you said, there's nothing to complete. Now, I think I had to address a little bit the intro 1175B. That's an state intro. And I think I should start saying, I believe in law and order, but this intro is law and chaos. Let me read what the text said at the beginning in the line number 6, quote, however, street vendors in the city of New York have historically faced several barriers to business viability as a result of antiquated city laws, rules, and policies limiting the number of vending permits and licenses, as well as the criminalization of vending by the New York City Police Department and other agencies. To effectuate the removal of these barriers, the legislature finds and declares that there should be no limit on the number of street vendors permit and license that can be issued in the city. Artificially created limits on the number of street vendors only forces the creation of underground market, as well as vendors operating without license or permits outside of the regulatory system. Being said that, this is supported by 9 senators. And I'm going to see if Will can help me to put the locations, the map that I did. Willie, can you help me to put, I want to share it.
Robert, Will is not on. Robert's
I'm
on.
sorry, thank you.
Robert's
Marco,
on.
I'm here for Will. You should be able to share your screen.
Oh, okay. So now let me see if I can do that. Well, sharing, okay, it's right here. But should I go this way? No, I think I did something wrong. How do I go? I'm in the box that's saying screen.
You're in your inbox now, Marco. You may want
Marco,
to.
you're in
You're
your
on
email,
your computer
Marco.
inbox. You may
Oh,
want
it's
to
right here.
get that off the screen.
Okay.
Yeah,
now
there's the map.
Okay. This the map that you want to see it is introduced by 9 senators, as I said before. Ramos, District 13, Queens, Serrano, District 29, Bronx and Manhattan. This is our senator that cover our small area in the Upper East Side. Julia Salazar, District 18, Brooklyn. Luis Sepulveda, District 32, Bronx. Alexandra Biaggi, District 34, Bronx. Javari Bisport, District 25, Brooklyn. Robert Jackson, District 31, Manhattan. This is on the Washington Heights. Gustavo Rivera, District 33, Bronx. And Pete Hatman, District 40. I think he is in Westchester. As you can see, it is only one senator in Queens. I think she is the person who's putting this intro, the Senator Ramos. And then you have 2 on Brooklyn, and then you have in the Bronx 3, and actually 3, almost 4, because Senator Serrano covered South Bronx as well as part of the Spanish Harlem, and a small section of the Upper East Side included Roosevelt Island. And on the Washington Heights in the District 31st, this is the only district that covers Manhattan, and that is the Senator, what is the name of the senator?
Jackson.
Robert Jackson, District 31st. So as you can see, these districts, they are imposing us what we had to do in Manhattan, what we had to do in our community. My point of view is if they are willing to mess up the city, that's what I see. Well, why don't you can take the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Queens, take and make a limited street vendors. Leave it alone Manhattan, because we don't ask, at least our reps, they are unwilling to collaborate in that direction. They are not supporting this bill. And I think this map clearly shows these senators, they are knowing with a common sense to actually to help us. On the contrary, they try to create chaos. That is no good at all. In addition to that, I found that they put the veterans along with the general street vendors. And I think we are not grateful what they did to us. We had to create some benefits for this community. If we put as many street vendors, nobody's gonna profit. And if the veterans wanted to compete with those people, they're gonna lose the possibility to make some money, to make some income. And I think it's wrong. What we had to do, and that is my personal opinion, is we have to create an environment that the veterans have more chance to profit as a street vendors. And I think pretty much I covered this section of the intro 1175B. Michelle, you want to add something?
Yeah, so this clearly shows, as Marco said, only one of the sponsors of this bill on the state level deals with with our district, and it's a very small upper portion of our district. So these are the people who sponsored it on the state level. So basically, we didn't have any representation there. And I think what Marco was saying is that if these people from the outer boroughs want to enact certain things within their districts, they should do that. There's been a lot of discussion over the years anyway as to whether or not vending should be handled district by district, or should it really be, should the laws and rules and regulations really be citywide? Because we recognize that there are districts that have different feelings about vending. Although I've worked in groups where I work with the Bodega Association, with the 125th Street Association, with the Korean Grocers Association, and in Queens, the Korean Grocers Association. They have had a lot of difficulty with street vending. And they have, the people who are selling fruits and vegetables have caused certain bricks and mortar stores, small stores, not the supermarkets, but they've caused some of the small stores to close. So all this has been going on for 100 years. I don't think that any of the bills that are proposed, whether on the local level or on the street level or the state level, are going to help with any of our concerns. And so we continue to have to be vigilant. We continue to have to monitor. What I do at the moment is I send to my specific contacts at Department of Health and DCA, that is now an enforcing body. I send them all of the complaints and all of my personal observations about the specific locations of vendors who I feel are non-compliant, so that I can direct their enforcement squad to these locations. There are all too many that have fruits and vegetables in the tree pit, that have expanded what's supposed to be their 1 8-foot table. They have 2 or 3 8-foot tables. They have their own carton towers on the sidewalks that have fruit and vegetables in them. They have inventory trucks that are parked illegally, that have additional inventory so that they can restock their street tables and carts. The inventory is subject to extreme weather conditions in either direction, hot or cold. And we know that that presents a health hazard and is not at all in any way relatable to the requirements of maintaining refrigeration or climate control over fruits and vegetables and produce that are in a supermarket. So having said all this, let me open it up to questions, either about the legislation and or about location or whatever it is you'd like to talk about. So if there are any hands raised, I think, Marco, we could take this screen share, we could take this down.
Yeah,
So that it'll be
I don't know.
easier.
Let me see if I can.
Can you get it down? It'll be easier to see the hands that are raised. Is there any, I see Barbara's hand up, but she's a member of the board. Is there a member of the public? I see Aura. Let's just give Marco a chance to close this.
I think I did that.
Oh, you did. Great.
Yes.
Okay. So I see Aura, her hand is up. And so can we unmute Aura, please, so she can speak? There you go. You're unmuted.
Okay, thank you for letting me speak. I'll try to keep this as brief as possible. My name is Ora Masarsky, and I'm on the board of the East 86th Street Association, as well as living on East 86th Street. Apparently, about a month ago, the Department of Health shut down the fruit and vegetable vendor on the northeast corner of 86th and 3rd because I don't even want to say this over dinner time, but apparently the rats had overrun it and left marks of their being there, droppings all over. So the Department of Health closed him down, took him away. Guess who was back today? Same guy. Spoke to the man in front of PC Richard, who explained to me very nicely that he wasn't shut down because when he sees a rat, he just smacks it with a broom that he keeps on hand.
Great.
So I'm thinking, yeah, I see Marco. Yeah. And, you know, how effective is this broom dealing with rats? I'm not sure. I do know that Julie Menon and there's Andrew and Andrew Fine have done an outstanding job, got the stuff done. However, they're back. In addition, for a couple of years now, the Birria truck that parked itself across from Ulta, even though there's no food vending between, 3rd and Lex, they even had their address. They used Ulta's address as their location if you wanted to come by. Well, they got moved. So now they're on the northeast corner of East 86th Street. And I was informed that it is illegal to vend anything, food truck to park in the street, an active food truck with the engine running and so forth at a metered parking spot, which is where they are.
That gets a little iffy. We have been successful in getting some of them removed on Lexington Avenue. What happens is the police were responsible for giving tickets for being overparked at a meter. And then they claimed that if they weren't there, what you're not allowed to do is remain at the same meter. And then the police were saying that if they were not there to visually see that the truck did not change and go from one meter to another, they couldn't issue a second ticket. So that was the little technical legal bind that we were in, that of course is crazy, but it was one of those things. So just to clarify for you, that's where the illegality is. And let me add also, this is one of the reasons we wanted citing, because the reality is there is no legal place in the entire city of New York for a food truck vendor to legally vend. They're not allowed to stay at meters all day. They're not allowed to be in no standing. They're not allowed to be in no parking areas. We have asked for designated spots, one every 10 blocks, one every 5 blocks, convert a parking lot into a vending thing, do what they do on 8th Avenue, where one storefront will accommodate multiple vendors in its interior. You'll have a Baskin Robbins sharing with a Dunkin' Donuts or something like that. Create those kinds of zones. We have been left we have not been acknowledged with that. That would be the answer. But that's why siting is so important. They have the technical capability to do siting with the electric chips, but they've never written the program and they haven't put it into effect. So that's one area that we can really push for, as we've been doing, but to no avail at the moment. But go ahead, Ora. I just wanted to clarify for you.
My quick question is, if I, as a citizen walking down the street, see this flagrant violation, that birria truck has not moved for weeks. If I see the fruit, vegetable, and rat vendor, what can I do? If
Well,
I see the
you
birria
can let
truck
me
taking
know
up
firstly.
parking, I'm sorry?
You can let me know. I'm taking notes here now. I will contact, first of all, let me put it this way. I know it's annoying as can be and people don't like to do it. But the truth is 311 is a good thing to do. Not so much because they're going to run right down there that minute and do something, but because it creates the paper chase, which eventually gets back to the appropriate agency, so that the Department of Health and the Department of Consumer Affairs will get that information if you call 311 and keep a record of your complaint number. The second thing you can do is email me. If you don't have my email, send it to CB8. They'll send it to me. I send a list on a regular basis to the Department of Health and the DCA. And they do respond to me as to after they go and check it out. The issue remains with vigilance. As we said in the report, there's a pittance when it's a number of enforcers compared to the population and the number of vendors. I have repeatedly over the years asked for a ratio. I said, don't tell me you've got 15 enforcers or 20 enforcers. Tell me what the ratio is of enforcers to vendors. That's what I want to know. Do you have 1 to 50? Do you have 1 to 100? Do you have 1 to 500? That'll tell us, you know, how efficient the enforcement can actually be. That's another area that if you write with complaints, that's what you can ask for. But 311 and forward the location to me. I just took note of the fruit on the fruit vendor. This is a table vendor, right? The
Several
northeast
tables
corner
and
of
an awning.
Excuse me?
Several tables and a tenting.
And then over the, yeah, many, more than one table lined up and his inventory truck stands here. It's the northeast corner of 86 and 3rd, right?
Right.
Does anybody out there, because I haven't passed them recently, has anybody seen 86th and 2nd on 2nd Avenue? I've reported them. They have 3 or 4 tables lined up and all the fruit in the tree pits. If anybody sees that, please continue to monitor, send that to me, Ora. If you see that, I'm making a note here that 86 and 2nd also. Okay. Ora, you have anything else to add?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, then I'll go to Andrew.
Before you go to Andrew,
Oh, go ahead, Marco.
I had to say, Andrew, thank you so much what you're doing for the community. I'm seeing this is one of the example person that tried to do something against the rats. I saw him personally, and I had to say thank you so much for doing something for the community. Okay, Andrew.
I'm going to add to that, Andrew, lest you blush with praises. I don't want to see you blush, but I want to thank you also for going down and participating in the Q Up rally. And we're working on having the Q Up Yuckmobile come around our neighborhood. When you talk about rats, that's a group called that has formed in opposition of open restaurants. And they've been working on the rat infestations in the exterior sheds, and they had a rally down in front of 250 Broadway where the council members' offices are, and Andrew participated, so I thank him. But go ahead, Andrew, your remarks for tonight.
Gee, wow, I guess I am blushing, but I'm Irish, so I'm like naturally blushing anytime I face the wind or the sun. Thank you so much. I really wanted to thank Ora, Michelle, Marco, Valerie, I feel like we're all like one happy family here, or one unhappy family here, working together. And I really appreciate all the effort that you're putting into reining in the out of control street vendors and any variety of quality of life issues that we're all facing. And I feel like we're fighting our way uphill, but at least we're in it together, and I really appreciate the camaraderie on that. Everything that Aura said, I agree with 1,000%. We have been fighting, and I feel like sort of like a Pied Piper of sorts, trying to chase the rats off of East 86th Street. We've had a lot of cooperation from Julie Menon's office. They've had the carbon monoxide treatment rat guy out there for the last couple of months. We've gotten it down from 100+ holes in 21 tree pits on 86th Street between 2nd and Lex to 5 tree pits, 5 or 6 holes. Sorry, Aura, a couple of them are down your way at 233. And Mimi's Pizza and PC Richards and Cohen's Fashion Optical, but we're doing our best. The part of the problem is that we're feeding the rats. The fruit vendors are feeding the rats. The outdoor dining is feeding the rats. Mimi's Pizza, they're feeding the rats. Sorry, Mimi's, your pizza's not bad, but your execution of outdoor dining is awful, and you're feeding the rats. I wish we could kind of get these fruit vendors under control. I know that Aura referenced the guy in front of PC Richards, John, who will literally beat rats with a broom. God bless him. Thank you very much, John. You're the best fruit vendor on the block. But we've had 3 vendors on the block, and 2 of them have been incredibly problematic in terms of violations where, for instance, you're not supposed to have your boxes directly on the sidewalk, and they do that. And that's why when we called, we being me and with the help of Julie Menon's office, we called the Department of Health and got the guy shut down that's in front of Lululemon, who's back today. I don't know how. His setup, which included a truck, a tarp, rope, multiple tables, and stringing onto the NYC Link kiosk. The Link kiosk actually got infested with rats because it's warm and they have a fan in there and it's motorized and whatever. That was infested. We had to get on Department of Information and Technology to fumigate their own kiosk. And that's something to look out for, by the way. If you see a kiosk, just look down. There's a little bit of a gap. If you see a whole bunch of droppings, please let your local council member know that this needs to be remediated. Anyway, yeah, I guess I'm just kind of rambling, but we need all the help that we can get in enforcing the vendors, especially the food and fruit vendors. Aura mentioned Berea. I also complained, I had a complaint to the Department of Health on Berea, and they just dismissed it 2 days ago. They moved across the street because they had a movie shoot, or Succession was shooting on 86th Street. So they moved across the other side of the street. Apparently, Department of Health couldn't find them, so they just dismissed the complaint. All I can say is please keep the pressure on everybody. Call 311, call your local council person. We can do this. We can make a difference. I feel like we are making a difference. The number of rat holes is down about 95% on 86th Street, which is a miracle. Keep pressing. We can do this. But please keep complaining about these fruit vendors and the food vendors that are not supposed to be there, because we can't feed the rats. And that's what we're doing. We're trying to eliminate that. But and again, thank you to all my comrades in arms for keeping the pressure on. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Let's go to Barbara Rudder.
I'm going to have somewhat of a negative. I understand your passion. I respect it and agree with a lot of it. I will tell you a couple of things sort of out of order. The idea that you say that they are making so much money means people are buying from them. So there is a small community is against it, and that's the Upper East Side only. The fruit, I'm on 87th and 2nd. I'm intimate with the one on 86th and 2nd. Are you right that they do have boxes out there? Yes. Is that wrong? And do I wish they would clean that up? Yes. They keep the place amazingly clean. It's CVS that's disgusting. They keep that place amazingly clean. I have never seen a truck there for any length. I think it comes later at night than I am out. I'm not walking around at 10 or 11 o'clock at night. I have a friend that walks her dog there and she sees the truck there. If you have somebody that is really, we know that laws are broken on every aspect, whether it's looting or anything else. So to just say that it's the fruit vendors is hard. I don't understand why fruit vendors are put in the same category as other food vendors. To me, there is a world of difference. The regular food stinks. It is horrible for people living there. I've had people that I know I talked to a lot of people about it, and probably not the same people that you do. And I'm not dumb on this issue. The issues, these other vendors, they smell. When you eat it, there's paper, there's napkins and all. That's not true with the fruit, vegetable ones. They put it in a bag and you go home. There is no oil dripping. You do not ruin the sidewalk. And I don't understand why this committee and the people that come to this committee seem to only focus on the fruit and vegetable. And when you talk about food, I wish we separated food from the different types of food. There's a big difference between the tacos and even the ice cream that have the motors running nonstop. Our city is so noisy and we have that. I object to that. I find out of all of the ones to complain about the fruit and vegetable, in my mind, and most of the people I know, and I know it's most of the people because I do stop. I bought delicious grapes today from the fruit vendor on 2nd Ave. No, I did the one on 86th in York. So that's where I was. And it is packed with people that love this stuff. Upper East Side, well-to-do people, not the people in the Bronx and all of that. I feel the rat situation we all know is terrible. Andrew, I've seen rats by that movie theater, which is absolutely the fruit and vegetable, at least is pretty fruit. Things like the movie theater with broken down plywood, different colored graffitied stuff is what makes things bad. And that's where the dirt is. I'm there all the time, and that's where the dirt is. So certainly if somebody's doing anything illegally, whether you're jumping a turnstile or doing something wrong with that, or speeding or driving backwards, which I see all the time, we should do something about it. And unfortunately, things aren't good. We all know that it's not good enough and people will come back with it. But I just wish there was more fairness and who would come to this meeting and maybe have one of the council people, the senators, to say why they voted that way and so on. And that's my feeling about it. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. Let me address a few of the things that you've said. I agree with most of it. Firstly, one of the reasons that we talk about fruit and vegetable vendors in the same breath as the truck vendors is because we talk about enforcement and they're handled under the same agencies. So we have no control about that. Whether or not you think non-compliance of the fruit vendor is less problematic than non-compliance of the oil spilled or the fumes of not only the truck vendor, but the ones who's barbecuing out in the street, that's a separate issue about which is more offensive. I agree with you. I find the odors particularly offensive of the ones, the cooking vendors. We've had a fabric business on Second Avenue that actually went out of business because there was a cooking vendor in front of that store, and the fumes went into his store and got, the fabrics absorbed them, and
That's
his
also
store
Shake Shack.
smelled, and it was terrible. So, I don't doubt anything you say, but the reason we handle them all together in terms of compliance is because we are not accepting the non-compliance of anybody, whether it's not being 20 feet from a resident, whether or not that's as bad as your cooking smells. They're handled by the same agency. So when we ask for compliance, we have to go to the same agencies and we have to talk to them the same time. Now, for example, the truck vendors and the cooking carts that you're talking about, they are special. And I've spoken about this ad infinitum, and you've been at those meetings. They are obligated to go to a commissary every 24 hours. They do not necessarily, nor is there a way to track them. There could be a way to track them. We have a way to track them, but the process is not put in place. Now, these commissaries, and for those of you who've been on other meetings, you've heard me say this a million times, but for those of you who haven't, those commissaries are there for sanitation and for them to bring their garbage back to the commissary. The commissary cleans, provides potable water, and in some cases provides food. Now, these commissaries are privately owned. If a commissary owner doesn't think he's got enough business and he's not doing well, he goes out of business. There is no obligation for another commissary to open in a nearby area, making it convenient for these carts to report every 24 hours. So you say, doesn't it make absolute sense to have a tracking device? And if you have a repeater of a food cart or anybody taking care of food, not going to such a commissary,
I
shouldn't
have
some
no
central
argument with
bureau?
that, Michelle.
Okay, so
When I started
what-
off saying I agree with a lot of what you
so
say,
what I'm
always
saying,
ends up being fruit and vegetables. I've gone to almost every
no, you haven't. You hear a non-compliance being reported about that, as was others, but it's not only fruits and vegetables. We've handled the cooking things 1,000 times. For what you're hearing tonight, you're hearing. I know that you have a favorite of your food vendor. That's fine.
through COVID. I wouldn't
But
go
no
into
matter,
grocery
excuse
store.
me, Barbara,
Okay.
excuse me. I'm just responding to your question. But we are not only focusing on them, and no matter how much you like them, and we recognize that if this weren't big business, this would not be an issue. So we recognize that all over the city, these businesses are patronized, people like them, but people like a lot of things and they still have to be compliant. I'm after the ice cream truck and any food that idles the truck. I report it all the time. I report around New York Hospital. They're in the ambulette loading zones. They're in the no standing zone. Everything gets reported. What happens to be pointed out at a specific meeting does not constitute the focus of this committee. And this is the vendor committee, and that's why we're not talking about anything else but vendors. So with that, let's go to Robin.
I
as a
have
member
to
of the
leave. I
public.
have another
Thank
thing.
you.
Thank you, Michelle.
So I was here a long time ago, and the reason I do not attend is because ever since the opening of the Second Avenue subway entrance on 69th Street, we've had a collection of different vendors, and many of them have been in compliance, and we have one that has not for many years. And the last meeting I went to, I actually spoke to a health department person who said he was going to go and visit this taco truck that has not moved in 4 years, not moved to go to a commissary. I can't even imagine what's going on underneath that cart. But for some reason, if they are not pushed to move, to even get cleaned, they just keep pushing, according to their own rules. And I could call 311 till I'm purple and nothing would change, because the health department person apparently said he went. I don't know what happened, but
Well, I'll
maybe
tell
they
you.
told him.
I'll tell you what happened, Robin. First of all, yes, it was Mr. Middleton. And yes, he took your note. I followed up by emailing him. He told me that his agents went there, and one of your concerns, two of your concerns, is one, that they're not going to the commissary, which, as I
Ever.
told you, they don't seem to have a mechanism for monitoring that, which is terrible. The second thing is, I believe you complained that they're there until all hours. Were you the one that's under your window and you hear a lot of noise? They're
Oh, no,
into-
no, no,
into the-
no.
Oh, okay, that was
That's
somebody
not
else.
it.
But that they don't even have a way of monitoring if they go to the commissary. So that's unfortunate. Now, what he did tell me, because I followed up, is he did go down and he told me that he found them compliant.
And
Now-
how would they, now what I want to know is if there's a book of rules and all the other vendors I see leave at a certain time of day, whether it's, they've been here for 6 hours or 3 hours or 5 hours, this truck, how are they in compliance if they never leave? Because Mr. Middleton was there and, in the middle of the day for what, 15 minutes? And
Which
they
is
told
the
him,
taco- It's
the taco truck on 69th Street and 2nd Avenue. How are they compliant if in 4 years that truck has not moved off that spot? How is that compliant?
Is it parked at a meter?
No, it's
What's it
on a
parked?
corner.
What's the street? Well, what's there? Is there a hydrant? What's there? It's a parking spot? Is it alternate sides?
Yeah, it's a parking spot. It's a parking spot.
It's alternate sides of the street parking? Because we
I
don't
don't
have
know.
any other kind of parking spots.
I don't know. I don't know. All I know is that if in fact a truck needs to leave every 24 hours or within 24 hours to get cleaned and go to a commissary, this truck has been stationary for 4 years, never leaves. I've been
I'm
up in the middle of
reporting
the
it
night.
again. You're quite right.
But he went, my point is
He did.
that he
But what I'm-
claimed to visit and say they're compliant. What are they telling him? Are they giving him money? I mean, what is I promise you that truck never leaves. I've been up in the middle of the night, their lights are on, they have a car that comes by and delivers them food. It has never been thoroughly cleaned inside out. And what it bothers me more that as long as nobody stops them, they continue to do whatever they want. So what's a rule book for? What do we have any laws for? I mean, I have the same issues with scooters and bikes and everything that are just flying through red lights. We don't have any rules in this city anymore.
Yeah, well,
And they,
your voice-
as long as they have met with Mr. Middleton, they're good for another 4 years.
Well, let's hope not. But you're certainly voicing all of our frustrations on many, many levels. So you're not alone, which is unfortunate. This is on the east side of the street, right?
It's on the west side of the street.
What,
The
which corner?
southwest corner,
Okay,
right
the
by
taco
Pottery
truck.
Barn Kids.
Okay.
Pottery Barn Kids.
Now, I am going to write to him again. And the reason he said it was compliant is because, as I told you, they have no mechanism of checking on going to the commissary, which is outrageous because that's the health part of all of this. That's the Department of Health. That's the requirement for cleaning. I mean, that's the whole thing. And it's amazing. Of course, we don't know, but that no one has been ill. Maybe this man cleans it himself, but that's not what the thing is supposed to be.
Right.
So
That's
I
not
hear
good
your
stuff.
frustration. I'll reach out to him again. But the only reason I'm saying I'm not defending the system, as you well know, because of what I've been doing all these years, but I am saying that because of the system, the inspector doesn't even have a way of knowing if the truck is compliant. That's the sadness of it all. And in this day of electronic, there's no reason they shouldn't. If that truck had a chip on it, they would know that it's never left, and that would be the end of that conversation.
Right. So they
But
have
that's just too easy.
After all these years with a committee formed, with a city council, they haven't even if it's to hire a nighttime person to check. that that person is left. They haven't figured out a single way to handle the problem of, okay, so they don't have chips yet. You still have to control, you still have to have some level of control. And there's no will. That's what bothers me. They don't care. As long as he went to the truck and said, do you leave at night to get cleaned? And they said yes, because they don't understand any English in that truck, lied anyway. It's like, but the point too is that we who live here for so many years have to put up with whatever it is that these vendors or motorcyclists, whatever it is, whatever laws are being broken these days. Nobody seems to have the will to, get a grip. I mean, I'm living here since the 70s. It feels like the 70s here.
Well,
everything is so out of control.
And
that to me, that taco truck represents that to me. I mean, I could talk about the fruit vendor in front of CVS between, I think, 64th and 65th Street or 63rd. It's about a mile long. Are they in the tree bed? Yeah, I'm pretty sure they are. And it's
what's
huge,
the address?
but they're very popular.
What's the address?
I don't know
fruit
the
vendor?
address. It's on it's by the CVS. I think it's between 64th and 65th Street.
On what avenue?
On the west, 2nd Avenue, the west side. They're very, very popular. It's huge. Huge.
Okay. Look, Robin, I thank you for your perseverance as all of us. You're expressing your frustration. It represents all of us. It represents why people are leaving the city.
Yes.
Why the elected officials aren't more sympathetic to all the quality of life issues, I really don't know. But you have a city council that has eliminated enforcement of a good percentage of the quality of life issues as though they were not important. So as you see the kind of compliance that's being demanded in every industry, it's diminishing on a daily basis. It's terrible. However, if you give up, you've only added to the problem. We keep banging our heads against the wall for the solution, but I submit we have to do that if we want to see anything and if we want to live here.
Well,
So
I feel also, one of the biggest problems I find since the pandemic, particularly with things like, traffic issues with bikes and everything, there used to be town halls where it was live. There's a very big difference when you have a crowd that stands up and can yell at the Rebecca Seawrights and the Gale Brewers and say, I'm a senior, and when I walk down the street, I'm frightened for my life. I fell the other day, I broke a tooth. I'm so agitated because I'm so afraid of the lack of control of so many things in the city. So there's no public forum where a group of people can they're just hearing things on Zoom and in emails. So none of that sounds threatening and none of it sounds frightening to them. I really don't think it has an effect. One thing that Ben Kalos did, which was quite brilliant, and I went to many of his meetings, was he had a First Friday meeting every Friday. And when we had issues, he saw that people were agitated and he took care of things. I find it so frustrating that there's no public forum with the big wigs in this city to hear how those of us who've been living here for 60 years feel like, I don't want to be here. This is the first time in my life where I'm saying I don't want to be here anymore. And that taco truck is almost like a poster child for my frustration, And you know that because I started complaining about 7 years ago, right? To you.
I get it.
And nothing has been done. Nothing.
A lot of the responsibility is with the city council. This is not a priority for them. It's anything but. Your local council members may or may not be responsive. Just so you know, Ben Kalos wanted to convert all of 86th Street to vendors only. So Ben Kalos was not somebody we would turn to for help with vendor control. While he was wonderful with preservation, but when it came to vendor control, his idea was to eliminate parking on 86th Street and have it be all street vendors. And my discussion with Ben was to say, who of your constituents has asked you for that? Tell me who asked you for that. Of course, it was nobody. The other thing is, but he was wonderful with preservation. But the other thing is you have a lot of council people and other elected officials who really are there, who have made it their issue to advocate for their particular pet peeves. Some represent their own agendas, some represent the community's agendas. There are times where those are in conflict, and we have seen that, and that happens sometimes. But I beg of you, don't give up, because I mean, I have been at this for as far back as I can remember. I don't relish saying that, but I don't see us giving up. So I am going to report, and I'm also, Robin, going to report your frustration.
Michelle.
Okay, go ahead, Marco.
Why not?
And then we'll go to Valerie and Andrew.
When you send an email to Mrs. Middleton, specify that this truck, they never move, and to see if somebody else, as an inspector, go after 10 or 11 p.m. so they can testify what the Robin is mentioned right here, because this is the only thing we can do. We cannot.
No, we have no other recourse.
And then also, I think you have an opportunity now to talk with Julie Menon too. She is responsible for that part. So far, my understanding is she doesn't support street vendors. And maybe she can also, she has more power than us. Remember, we are just only an advisory committee. We are no more than that. But we bring the best that we can, because we care about our community. We care about the quality of life in our community. And this is the only thing what we can do. If we have these meetings, if you have more ideas, welcome, bring it, and we can organize whatever you need. So then we can figure out a solution of the problems, because as you see it on the Senate, they try to increase even more street vendors. So this is,
and that's on the state level,
wrong. And so we try to explain what's going behind and what is our role and what is the role of yours. Because if you give up, we are going to give up the community, and that's not good at all for nobody. And that's, we need your help, Robin. We need to your help, Aura, and all of us. We can do something different and make our neighborhood better than before. Yeah. And thank you. And Michelle, try to talk to Mr. Middletown to see if he can figure out something
after hours. When I
you.
Initially reached out to him after that meeting, I spelled out the round the clock and all that, and the 24 hours and what's under the truck, and et cetera, et cetera. His response to me was what I told you, because they don't hang around long. They go. He seems to be doing business. They have no proof or evidence of anything else. We'll do it again. And that's one of the reasons for these forums, is to bring things to people's attention, to the agency's attention. Let's go to Valerie, please. She's waiting patiently.
I'm waiting patiently, but I'm also at the same time texting. Robin Street is obviously in my catchment area, and I was just texting with somebody who lives in the building directly across the street from the taco place. We have not had, Robin, one complaint about that taco vendor. You're the first person that I've heard to complain about the taco vendor. That doesn't mean that your complaint isn't valid. I mean, look, all along 2nd Avenue, we have fruit vendors that do not move, that they're there 24 hours a day and they do not move. And we have religiously talked about them, and we are just lucky that we don't have the problem with rats at those locations that Andrew has on 86th Street. But we have been monitoring them. And to Barbara's point, 85% of the people in the community love the fruit vendors. They don't want them to leave. They also do not see or understand the connection between having any kind of food on the outside of on the sidewalk and the increase in vermin. And when you point it out to people, they're mystified. So a lot of it has to do, everybody wants their cheap fruit and they want their cheap food. And they do not make the connection that there is some connection between the cheap food and fruit and the number, all the garbage that's piling up, all the waste that's piling up. And, I appreciate that people take their food and go home, but that fruit is sitting there and people just don't do they're happy to pay less and they don't want to think about anything else that's related to it. So that's what I want to say about that.
Valerie, I just want to point out to Robin that you're the president of the East 72nd Street Association. So she may not have understood that, and that you're speaking.
Well, if Robin can
with
put
that
her
knowledge
address in the chat, I'd like to know, where she is, because I'm just hooking up with one of our representatives from the building. And actually that taco stand is not in Julie's district. It's in Keith's district. It's on the west side of 2nd Avenue. I know exactly the taco stand that she's talking about. It is a very late night business. I don't know if I think it serves breakfast and late night dinner.
You know what?
Unmute.
Unmute Robin, because
sure.
we're frustrating her additionally by not letting her make this,
okay.
this comment in response.
I understand exactly, the fact that nobody is complaining sounds to me like the same thing as with, bicycles racing through red lights. No, what I'm saying is that there's a set of rules. And they need to follow the rules, whether it's that, in fact, I have the corner to myself for 8 hours in the evening, or that I don't have to look at that truck's lights in the middle of the night. Those are the rules. And the fact that nobody checks them on it and nobody else complains because they like tacos isn't an answer for me. That's not the right answer.
That's
I'm not
not what
disagreeing
Valerie
with
is
what you're
saying.
saying. I'm
Yeah,
not
she doesn't-
disagreeing with what you're saying.
Okay.
There's two things I want to say about enforcement. And this is the toughest part. There are some laws that deal with lights. There are not a lot of laws that deal with lights.
There are no laws with the lights on
Right.
the trucks. There are no
When
rules.
we had to go and we spoke to Omar at the truck and said, please, you're directly across from a building with 100 families in it. Can you please turn the lights off as a courtesy to your neighbors? And he did it as a courtesy to his neighbors. There's no law in New York City that says you can't have those lights going around a million and big and whatever. There's nothing against it. That's the problem. There aren't a lot of, Michelle's talking about location. My advocacy is that the sidewalk is for the pedestrian and everything is secondary. And the problem with the street vending or any kind of vending is that first it takes up space, but now because we have these poor delivery drivers who have nowhere to go, they're congregating around these vending sites, and there's even less room on the sidewalk for people to walk by. And I've been trying to get the electeds to get some of these food companies to have to lease these empty storefronts and create depots for these poor delivery guys who are out in the elements 24/7 all year long. It's too hot in the summer and it's too cold in the winter. There's no place for them. And instead of them eating on the benches, and so they have a place to go and also open up the sidewalks. I know it's not a street vendor issue, but it's the street vending is providing cheap food to everyone, to delivery workers, to hospital workers, to anybody in the neighborhood who doesn't want to pay $6 for a cup of coffee and only wants to pay $3. I mean, so you cannot fight your neighbors who are creating the supply and demand for this. You just can't. But you can do
gotta
something.
Follow the rules. You
Right,
gotta
yeah.
follow the rules.
But there aren't a lot of rules.
You know, there are
Robin.
other trucks that have shown up and have come and gone. I don't care about them. That doesn't bother me. I actually thought that would bother me, but they come and they go, and we have a corner clean and available for a few hours a day. You know, because we have a
Well,
new truck that's
all I
on
can
the
tell
same
you is-
Hold it, please, Robin. Thank you. Your point has been made and very well taken. Let Valerie finish
Yeah,
her remark.
I'm gonna look
She's-
into it now with everybody else on 69th Street, because I can't, I know it's there late at night. I don't know if it leaves between 1 a.m. and
It
5 a.m.
never leaves.
All right,
It
hold it.
never, ever
If
leaves.
you-
I
hold it.
promise.
Robin,
Okay, well
hold
then
it.
you
Will
need to
mute
take
Robin,
pictures.
please?
You need to take pictures and
I
you
was
need
gonna
to
just
send
say,
them to.
I suggest if you have anybody in that building, Valerie, and you know anybody who's at the front of the building who would have access to take like a series of timed photos. I'm going to report this anyway, and saying that it has been observed, but if we can actually show, and I don't know how visible their permit is, but it would be nice if we could get the permit number. If you have the ability to get that, Valerie,
Yeah,
that would
okay.
be very helpful.
Yeah, but I
and then-
do, Robin, please send your information to Robert Burns so we have it. And I'm gonna see, because I have the person who's clicking in, you know, she's saying he has multiple shifts. I said, but that's not the point. Is he moving the truck off the corner? So we
Right.
will look into that for you as well. But the other
Thanks.
thing I want to say is, to the legislation that you were talking about, Michelle, which is what I really wanted to talk about, is this woeful enforcement. I don't understand why the traffic police who are walking around doing meters cannot also do this. There's
We
a
have
limited-
asked about that for years.
I know.
They
there's
are
a
under the
limited number of
jurisdiction-
tickets.
Wait a
You
minute.
can't- Go ahead.
They're under the, we've asked, we said, if the meter maids are out there, if I'm parked, if I'm 5 minutes late and feeding my meter, I'm getting a ticket. There is no doubt about it. They're out there in force. They're in great numbers. The answer is they are under the jurisdiction of the police department. Nobody wants to give them jurisdiction to ticket the vendors. Nobody wants to train them in vendor law. And under the current legislation, both state and city, all enforcement has been removed from the police department.
Well, I mean,
So-
it's sad because it's an underutilization.
Exactly,
of
it's an
the
obvious
police
solution.
in that regard, because you can only write a couple of parking tickets. Once you've written the parking ticket, you know, that block is done. And there are probably 10 other, you know, vendors or other things, whether it's bicycles, that can have tickets written. So that's the other thing I want to say. But the last thing I wanted to mention is just that I think it would, I just wanted to follow up on what Barbara was saying. I think it actually would be a good idea to try to invite state senators or their people from these other districts to understand what the issues are here. Because I think that's, you know, what we've been saying all along is every community is different. Every community has different needs and tolerances. And, you know, they don't have a corner where you have 3 carts and they're all blocking an entrance to a subway. And God forbid there's an event in the subway and people have to get out. They're coming up against these, you know, vending things that can't be moved. I mean, the food vendor things cannot just be dismantled. And plus they've got a truck behind them that, you know, you can't do anything about. So I think that's really a good idea to try to have people understand that we're not against people making a living and we're not against people having access to cheap food or whatever it is, because people in our neighborhoods want that. We're, to Robin's point, trying to put a scheme together so that there are rules, number one, and that people are following them. Because right now, all we've seen, I mean, you and I sat in public hearings a couple of years ago where we were trying to get 15 feet away from a subway and 15 feet. And the way the rules are written, they were written for subway stations that were the old style subway stations that aren't these plazas. So they don't even make any sense where you say, 15 feet from the opening of a subway. Well, you have open corners. What does that even mean? So it's even incapable of enforcement. So I think we need to get some of these legislators to come in and understand what we're talking about. And we also need to educate our neighbors between the link between they love it, but they don't understand what the consequences are. And if some of them understood it a little bit better, I think they might have a little bit of a different attitude. Or they could politely say to their guys that they're buying from is, you can't put your stuff on the ground. And if you continue to do that, I'm going to take my business elsewhere, because that is really what's going to rule here is if you don't have any customers, then you're not going to be on the corner, and people need to educate them. And I don't know the best way to do that. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Valerie. I'm going to go to Monica next.
Michelle,
Well, go ahead, and then I'll go to Monica.
Robin, I would like to ask a question. Does your building has a cameras? Because almost everybody has a camera outside. Does in your camera, that will be great, because if you have a camera, you can prove what you are saying.
Yeah, she's saying no.
That would be great.
She's saying no, but maybe Valerie can have somebody in the building.
Yes,
take a
the
series
other
of
point that I
pictures.
would like to raise is about Valerie. She said cheap food. She's right. The only situation is, and we are right here, is exactly, we had to avoid problems in the health of the community, because if these street vendors do not go to the commissariat, they can create a serious problem. What the food is cheap, in the long term could be very expensive, because probably he's gonna miss work, he's gonna be sick, he's gonna spend a lot of money to cure the problems of the food. We don't know that. So I don't think, sometimes it's relative to talk about cheap food, because at the end of the day, we don't know exactly if the street vendors follow the law. And if they don't follow the law, well, what do you expect? A crisis? So I think, Valerie, I agree with you that we have to educate the public to see if it's good or not to consume this kind of the products that produce the street vendors. And we are not against street vendors. The only thing we said is we had to organize them, and we had to put rational numbers in our community. And that's the only thing we're saying. And thank you so much, Michelle.
I'm going to go to Monica. Even though Boaz is a member of the public, Andrew already spoke, but Monica's been waiting patiently, so let's let her speak.
Hi. Yeah. I am actually on the board of my building, 250 East 65th Street, which is it's on 2nd Avenue, and its north border is 65th and south border is 64th Street. And Robin mentioned the fruit vendor. It's outside the CVS. When I got on the board, first thing I did was to go and introduce myself to the fruit vendor, and not just the guy who's there most of the time, but the guy who owns the cart or the tables now. Had a long talk with them about responsibility that they have. And they are very, very appreciative of the spot that they have. They've been there 16 years. And they actually care a lot of what's going on. And they were telling me problems that they've had when CVS reduced their hours from 24 hours, that the homeless population exploded at night and what they've had to contend with. And they were there the night of the looting in 2020. And they're actually kind of a safety net for a lot of things. And so I've emphasized to them the need for cleanliness, and they sweep when they can, but there are other problems on our block. We do have a food cart guy who does great falafels. I'm trying to work with him. He's pretty clean, but our big problem is actually the 7-Eleven store. They are really pretty. Whoever is owning it is very absentee, and they have not great workers. their garbage bags spill and have stained the sidewalk. There's one time that they had an event at CVS where they were giving out like free cookies, and there were people there who were regional directors. So I talked to them and I said, "You've got a problem with this store. It's dirty and disgusting." And they said, "Well, we're worried because it's kind of dark." I said, "Well, forget that. Clean the sidewalk." And so, I talked to someone high up, but I don't think they ever gave the message to the owner. So that's our situation down here. I want to kind of clarify that. The fruit vendor guys are outstanding citizens. It's kind of a mini food desert in that intersection because the only alternatives are very overpriced Gristedes and a Morton Williams on 3rd Avenue, which has been cited on a lot of websites of pricing things on the shelf one way and ringing them up differently. And then you'd have to walk over to Grace's or Whole Foods. So it's it's a great fruit vendor for people who are not very mobile. And I see during the day, it's actually kind of a destination for elderly people it's an event there. And yeah, they've grown their tables, but so has everybody else. So, I figure the city's just giving these fruit vendors a pass for a while. So everyone's extending their tables. I see that everywhere. So I wanted to clarify that about our block, that I'm kind of on our board. I'm a person that worries about the external issues. Like I go to the 19th Precinct Community Council meetings and bring up the issues there that we have on our block on homelessness and everything. So, and I actually, because Valerie mentioned something about speaking to a vendor who turned off his lights. And that's actually one thing that could be done. I find you introduce yourself to the vendor and get to know who they are and what they're all about, and make the request directly of if there's behavior or issues that are of concern. So that's all I wanted to add at this point. Oh, I did want to also say to Barbara was saying that you talk too much about fruit vendors. I've been coming to these meetings for many years. I used to think you didn't talk about them enough because it was always like it'd be the handbag guys or the popcorn guy on 86th Street or some of the other disgusting things that go on. So, it's just today just seems to be a fruit vendor kind of a day.
Thank you very much, Monica. The valuable comments. Let me go to Boaz and then to Andrew, since Andrew spoke already.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I'll make it very quick. So first of all, to Valerie's point, I agree 100%. Again, I don't know how the system works, but what she was saying, that there are so many storefronts empty. If we can talk with the decision makers and push the vendors to those stores, that will be a win-win. I live in 92 and 2nd, and they opened 2 years ago in New Delhi that opens late until, I don't know, 11 p.m. and sometimes even later. And it's great. It's you can buy vegetables, you can buy everything over there. And it's indoor, so it's very clean. So I don't know, just thinking idea out of the box. Now to Ruben, I want to give her a tip from my experience. First of all, when you report the issue, don't call. Use the application because then you get a ticket. They have a 311 app on the iPhone, Android. That's one. The second thing, ask for a few people to report it, and then they take it serious. That's at least my experience, just trying to help. Thank you, guys.
Sure. Also, I was going to add something to what you said, Boaz.
I think we had to raise the issue right there. What is the difference, the price between the supermarket and the street vendors? Obviously, they don't pay rent. To give you
they don't pay anything. Oh.
To give you an idea, the supermarket on 72nd and 2nd and 3rd Avenue, that place, they paid $2 million the rent, plus $1 million the city for the taxes. So this supermarket has to make that money in the selling of the products. So those people, those street vendors, they don't want to go in to pay rent. they are not willing to do that because the only thing they pay is $500 and that's it. And the rest is cash, no contribution to the economy of the city. So your idea is great, but the problem is they are unwilling to do that. And thank you so much for your comments. Go
Not
ahead.
only, I remembered what I was going to say to Boaz. Not only that, storefronts are privately owned. You can go to as many government officials as you want and make that suggestion, but they don't own the storefronts. They have, the storefronts have landlords, and they have requirements for what they want rents to be. And granted, it's a real glitch, and it's a blight, you know, on our streetscape to have so many empty storefronts, but they're in the hands of private owners. And that's why that's the case. So we can't really just jump in there. Sorry, Andrew and Oro, I have to make you wait because Olawatsosin, I'm sure I made a mistake with that, but you're up next, and I apologize.
No problem. Thank you very much. I'm more so on the positive side, and as a constituent for street vendors, I believe that Senate Bill S1175B has been supporting policies to help entrepreneurs and small businesses and the self-employed individuals as well. And as I focus, well, I heard everybody and their quality of life on street vendors, but on their aspect of it, I believe that they have been poor due to over policing and over incarceration in New York City. And as street vendors, they could be mobile and move to different locations where their service is highly required. And the subway is one of those locations. And in the city of New York, the transit system has been aggressive in policing. So leading to arrest on street vendors in the past has caused an uproar in like communities and social media. So with the regulation of street vendors in New York City, it has been a haphazard. So progressive reforms has been focusing on restrictions and like increased fines, fees for the violations, and the permit caps for what the vendors have been enduring. And by moving forward with implementing the new programs and amending relevant administration rules, legislation has passed the bill to regulate street vending, allowing limited ability on the ban for vending in certain locations and the restriction caps on licensing. So I do believe that they do have better quality and conditions in life now because of like the flexibility for them to work where they can with any hassle. And like it allows cancellation for past criminal convictions, or it just removes the current insurmountable barrier for the entry in the industry.
So I'm glad you're here. We usually have street vendors on this call, but I don't see them. Are you a street vendor?
No, I'm not, but I am an advocate for them.
Are you with the urban, what is it called? The Urban League that handles or represents street vending? What's your,
Yes.
Is there an organization, are you with them? Yes, I've worked with them over the years. No, I appreciate your comments. You know, one thing we've always said is, and the street vendors that are often on this call are veteran vendors. They've had a lot of, they've had issues with your agency. I wish they would, which is excellent in representing most street vendors, but unfortunately not as good as representing the veteran vendors. And I would love to see you take them into your fold. They deserve representation too. And yes, it is true. I know your organization hands out booklets in multiple languages with vendor law and vendor rules. I know your organization is very, very supportive of the vendor community, as we would be. What we're asking is for compliance. And over the past month or so, there have been numerous articles in the newspapers and online talking about the upset of the vendor community in the fact that they're getting so many tickets, so many violations, and it's so costly. But I haven't heard them say that they haven't committed the violations. So where we part ways, I would like to advocate for the vendors. The two vendors that always come to our meetings are good friends of mine. Where I like to advocate for them is I would like to advocate for their compliance. If they're compliant and they're following the rules and regulations that exist, they would not be getting so many fines. And we recognize that they're an integral part of the community. You hear us say that they wouldn't be as successful on the street if nobody was using the services. So we grant that. And some people say that they are small business people. Yes, they are. But they don't have the expenses that the bricks and mortars small business people have. And there is some concern about that. And the blight of empty storefronts is a blight on the community. And having a competition, which is not illegal, where our system is based on competition, but having competition has pushed out some of the bricks and mortar businesses. So what we're asking of your organization is to make sure that your vendors are compliant. We are happy to have them on the street. I would like to see them have set locations. I think that would be good for the vendor community and good for the residents and businesses in the overall community. And I would love for your organization to look into citing. What I have found, unfortunately, and I would like to see your organization improve because you do an excellent job, but part of being an advocate for a group or for a person, for an individual, is to advocate so that others don't jump in and create laws for you. In other words, you have a group, I'm really pleased that you're here tonight. Here are concerns about compliance, about going to the commissary every 24 hours, about if you're a vegetable vendor staying within your 8-foot table as is required by law, about the 20-foot rule, about all kinds of, you know, the rules and regulations. Advocate for your members to be compliant, because blind advocacy for no matter what they do does not help with the public relations for the community. And we would love to work with you. But what happens is if any industry, I don't care if it's your industry, now you're seeing things with the finance industry, if you don't sort of moderate or control your own community, your own businesses, others will jump in to do it for you. So if you can get your board of directors, your leadership on board to stress how compliance to the existing rules and regulations is so important to residents and bricks and mortar businesses, that would go a really long way to helping us all live together. I contend and have contended over the years that street vendors are a very, very abused population. They're taken advantage of. They're out there in all kinds of weathers, as others have pointed out. They have no break or place during the day to attend to their personal hygiene and facilities. They are abused by often license holders who hire them for the day, pay them minimum wage with no benefits. So I am sympathetic to all that, but I would like to see the representation that you offer your vendor community, that you should offer them representation that also demands that they're compliant with existing law. And actually, I'll just finish by saying that our reluctance and our opposition to increasing the number of vendors on the street is because we don't have enforcement of existing law for the existing amount of vendors that are on the street. So to expand that population at the current moment is to expand non-compliance. If everybody was compliant and you were asking to expand, there wouldn't be so much opposition. So I'm delighted that you're here tonight. I hope you will follow the community board listing and come to all of our meetings. But I hope you will take our message back to your management and let them know that we're happy to have them in the community, but we want compliant people in the community. And we would like you to push that as much as you push everything else.
Yeah,
So
Michelle.
thank you again.
Michelle.
Marco made a comment, and
Yeah,
then if you have
I
any
would like to
additional
comment.
commentary, I'd
Yeah,
love
I
to
would
hear
like to
it.
comment something, Mrs. Oyego. I'm sorry if I pronounce wrong. Let me explain you one thing. The law is to respect completely. And if the street vendor has been receiving some summon, you think, with all respect, that just only the city is targeting the street vendors. Myself, I'm a licensed architect. I have clients. They have been receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars in violations, hundreds of thousands of violations. The city, they can put a violation if the landlord do not clean 15 inches within the road. So, and everywhere is hundreds of thousands of dollars they charge that. And you think that the street vendors has been targeted? No, at all. If they comply with the law, they shouldn't have no violations at all. They shouldn't penalize. But if they disobey the law, I think it's wrong. We have to be in a city of law. This is what I said, law and order. So we respect the law. Everybody can take some piece of the big pie of the city. But if, because we're saying I'm a street vendor, there has to be waive everything. That is the intro. The intro said clearly they had to avoid or have to reduce the penalties for some violations that they did. Michelle the other day said, one street vendor said, they put me a violation because I was selling on the hydrant. Come on, this is a serious violation. And she's complaining because she's the only person that violates the law. And I think it's wrong. We are discussing right here only because is because they violate the law. We are not against the street vendors. Those street vendors that follow the law is perfectly fine. But those street vendors that break the law, they should be penalized. They shouldn't be reduce any penalties at all, because those building owner, they pay hundreds of thousands of dollars. I can give it to you, the address, and you will see it, what is penalized for other business. So the city do not penalize only street vendors. They penalize everybody that violates the law. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marco. Very important point. I would also like you, if you have any further commentary, Ms. Oyuo, will you unmute her, please, so that we could just hear if you have any further commentary? No, okay. If you want to say something else, raise your hand.
No, Michelle, thank you.
No, okay. All right, thank you very much. Let's go to Andrew. Will you unmute Andrew,
Yes,
please?
thank you. Thank you, Michelle and Marco. You guys are far more diplomatic than I could be. I understand. I understand Robin's viewpoint. We just heard from essentially an industry lobbyist that Oluwatosin, that said that on one hand, they don't want to follow the rules, but on the other hand, they want to claim persecution for being penalized for not following the rules. I mean, you can't have it both ways. And I understand, to Robin's point, Robin, thank you so much for caring and getting onto this call. I understand her frustration. Her frustration, I think, is beyond street vendors. I think it's our general sense, and we're all sharing in this, our general sense of lawlessness, whether it's the e-bikes running all over the place through the lights, not following the rules, the vendors. I have a picture, and by the way, it's 1223 2nd Avenue is the address of that fruit vendor. And I know you won't really be able to see it here, but sort of. This is about 25, 30 feet wide. And you see right in the middle of that stick, that's a tree. And that's a tree pit. And that's how to kill a tree and anything in the tree pit. This is not how you set up a fruit stand. I have sympathy for these guys. And Michelle, we both have sympathy for these guys. They're out, they're exploited. They have some guy in Florida that's selling them the license and they're sitting by a pool. And these guys have to make 20 or 30 grand just to like get by, or at least that's the case with a lot of these guys. I understand the frustration of Robin. There's a lot of lawlessness out there. To Barbara's point, back to the rats and the movie theater. The movie theater is not a source of rats right now. We had one spot on the south side of 86th Street between 2nd and 3rd Avenue, a little bit up from Fairway. There was a fruit vendor who was in massive violation, who had rat holes in the tree pit next to him that you could literally stick like a size 10 shoe into with no problem. It was disgusting. We have remediated that pit with help from our local council member. And further up the block, the Brompton has done a really good job at making sure that the tree pits next to the bus stop are properly treated. Anyway, I just want to say thank you again to everybody who really cares about this stuff. And I think that we have to stand for the law. Robin has a point, Michelle has a point, Marco has a point. Like, there are actual rules, and the least that we can ask is that they follow them, and then we can support them. But follow the rules first, then ask for our support. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Let's go to Aura.
Hi, I just wanted to kind of reflect on this meeting for a minute. I think what we're hearing everywhere, and especially Robin really put it very clearly and very
You
concisely.
guys can mute me.
What?
No, go ahead.
Okay. That, like you said, this feeling of helplessness, of, as I said to Michelle, how do we report it? There's this feeling that all these various agencies are supposed to be dealing with this, and it's always not my responsibility, it's a department of something else. Just for what it's worth, we were in Tel Aviv last month, and I know Boaz probably knows this. They have a squad of interagency enforcement trucks, pickup trucks. Guys have, there's Wi-Fi nowadays, and there are various ways of documenting things. And these guys drive around in the evening and during the day. And if it's a sanitation violation, they document. Camera, upload it. If there is a health department violation, that gets reported. And so there's not really somebody walking around with a book. That's 20th century. So since we have GPS and all these, various communication devices, there's really no reason for some guy to be walking around with a book. And when you say to him, this is a parking violation, he'll say, well, I have to come back and watch it because I have to see that they're here for an hour and I have to go to the next street. The result is nothing. So maybe if this city actually considered an interagency enforcement group, because the idea of having, once every 2 years, the inspector will come around and say, oh, looks like you're doing well, see you in another year. Seems a little ridiculous to me.
Excellent.
Michelle,
ahead,
I think that was part of the bill that they supposed to create an enforcement agent. But so far, we are far away that it's gonna.
And it's not electronic.
Yeah.
I mean,
Thank you for the comments. Thank you for the comments.
The old thing, Aura, which we were faced with, which you may or may not know, is in the years past, when we used to ask, we would say, but a policeman is standing right next to a non-compliant vendor, whatever the infraction was. And we'd say, oh, so are you writing a ticket? Oh, no, I don't have the ticket book. there was a special ticket book that only the supervisor carried. And if the supervisor wasn't on the street, you'd have to go back to the precinct, you'd have to call the it was ridiculous, an archaic system. We've been talking about this for years. They have all of the current electronics, the current systems that are available. It's all there, and there's no will to put it all together. And not only for this industry, it's for every industry. We're still having people walking around, writing out tickets. Then we would have a fuss that when the tickets were then sent down to compliance, to the judge, that it would be thrown out. And then the policeman, if he wrote the ticket, he didn't get the feedback. So he didn't know his ticket was thrown out, and we had them, and they did institute an electronic system that notified the police as to how their ticket that they wrote was adjudicated. So that was about, a little tiny baby step of progress in using the system. What you're describing is perfect. And I would love it if you were willing, it's your idea in your head, to write it up. And I would propose that we even try to bring it to maybe the environmental committee. We have a committee, environment and sanitation. We can bring this to all our committees to say, can we all, as a community board, advocate for some kind of a central system that unifies all of the agencies, and they do paroles. They attempted to do this with this advisory board, but the advisory board is sitting in their offices. You see, these bills are describing an advisory board. So this advisory board of the 12 people or however many is going to meet however often they meet, and they're going to sit around and they're going to discuss what their next steps are. That's not the same as being on the street. What you're describing is interdisciplinary agency action using an electronic tracking system that could in fact yield real data and focus on real results. If you would be willing to write that up in some way, I'll get it to whoever it needs to get to, if that's something that's comfortable for you.
Sure.
So I appreciate that. Thank you. Who's next? Valerie?
Thanks. I just wanted to say that just to clarify my comment on the open storefronts, I wasn't saying that we should take them over and make landlords rent them.
No, of course, I know that.
I was just trying to say, I think the solution is for the electeds to make the people who are making money off of the backs of these delivery workers, i.e. Seamless, Grub, Seamless Web, Uber, Grubhub, make them have to create these depots to create livable working conditions for these people who are working so very hard under horrible, horrible conditions. And, I think that's something we can work with the Street Vendor Project on, that these delivery workers really need advocacy, not to allow them to use an electric bike, whatever, but to create appropriate working conditions for them. And we have always been in favor of that and trying to help them get those conditions. And we shouldn't let these corporate guys be making so much money off their backs so easily with no liability and no responsibility for the conditions of their bicycles, for the conditions of everything, how they are forced to work. And even the street vendors who, to Andrew's point, are paying these unbelievable true rental fees for these carts, not the $100 that everybody's talking about, if that was only the case. And creating more licenses isn't going to make that easier for those guys. It's just going to make the rich guys richer. And until the electeds come up with a system and the government comes up with a system that really protects these people, we have to fight for them as well. And I think everybody on this call is in favor of that. Nobody is looking to exploit anybody, and the system that is in place now exploits everyone except for the rats. It feeds them very well. But that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, no, thanks, Valerie. That's absolutely true. And also, Yes, Marco. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I would like to comment about Valerie. Valerie, I think it's a great idea to discuss. The mayor has the program, the City of Yes, and it's very dangerous. The small business section, and one of the sections that we can include it is that is zoning, and I don't know under which one we should advocate to have this depot, because one of the arguments that they have is they present an issue. They said a bakery, and in the bakery they can enlarge, they can have an enlargement to produce the pastries no more than 700 square feet, and they said no, we want to have even larger, which I agree. In the case of the depots that you mentioned, it has to be regulated in something in that direction so we can occupy the empty stores. But this is going to be a good discussion for the City of Yes. That will be a good argument over there, because what they are proposing right now in the City of Yes, they're planning to combine C1 district with C2 district. This is extremely dangerous, because now our community, it will face not only street vendors, now we'll have, for instance, a lot of catering facilities working in our community. So the traffic will be unbearable. Biggest and a stifling traffic condition will create these kind of activities. So we need to discuss deeply the City of Yes. In the City of Yes, I think that is a very good issue to bring in that direction. And obviously, the street vendor also can participate with these good ideas that you propose, Valerie. Thank you.
Thanks, Marco. And what I wanted to add is that the supervisory license that's mentioned in these bills is supposed to address the fact that there should be one owner, one cart. What we have now, and I'm sure the street vendor project knows it very well, is we almost have conglomerates. In other words, you have one owner and he rents, he owns many, many carts, and he rents them out to many, many people who have vendor licenses, and they monitor and man the cart. However, the way the law is written now, it's not supposed to be that way. It's supposed to be one license owner, one cart with a permit for that cart. That's how it's supposed to be. So I don't know that any change in the law is going to address the non-compliance, because it basically says the same, but that was one of the reasons for it. So thanks very much. Monica, go ahead.
Hold on. Oh, okay. No, it's I guess Andrew already dropped off. I want to get a copy of that photo for 1223 Second Avenue, because I want to take it up with the people who have the table there. I couldn't see it really well, but we are have a very kind of a concern about the trees around our block in general, and I wanted to get a good look at that photo. To see
is anybody on from 86th Street on the call still? If Andrew left,
this is down. Oh, is he on 86th?
No, I was going to say, is he off the call? Because I was going to say to email it to Monica, or if you want to email it to me, I'll forward it to her.
He seems to have dropped off.
Is he on?
Yeah, he's not on.
Is Aura on? Because she's with the association. I'm not seeing her name. All right, I'll try to get it for you, Monica.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, anybody else? Valerie, is your hand up accidentally or on purpose? Accidentally? Okay, so if you lower it. I read your lips? No? Unmute Valerie so she can tell us what she's thinking, please.
You read my lips perfectly. I'm sorry. I'm trying to
accidentally
working,
okay.
And I'm trying to get a document out. Sorry.
Okay. All right. No problem. Anyway, are there anything else anybody want to say? Any other comments? All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah, okay, I'll second that. Let me say this. Let me thank everybody who's on the call. I really appreciate you all being there. Any ideas, any suggestions, you can happily email them to me, or if you don't have my email, go through the board office, tell them to send it to me, or Marco, copy us. And I'm happy to take your comments as far as we can get them to go. Rest assured that everything you told me tonight in terms of locations of non-compliant vendors will be passed along. And any of your ideas that you have not brought forth tonight, feel free to let me know about them. So let me first and foremost say, I hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving, and I wish you all a happy and a healthy new year. And with that, I guess everybody is happy to adjourn.
Thank you, Michelle, for your work. You did an excellent job. Thank
And
you.
thank you, Marco, very much. Okay. So,
Okay.
and also
Bye.
thank you, Robert, for your help and being as a
Thank you very much.
facilitator. Appreciate it. Okay, everybody. Good night. Thank you.
Night.